Thank you, Laura. Before I begin, I wanted to point out Ruth Wagner today. It's been about a year since Ruth has been here, but those that may not know Ruth, she is the mother of Reverend Amanda Wagner Mead up at First Christian Church Louisville. I worked with Amanda for 12 years. I gave Amanda many gray hairs, and it's the bane of her existence for a while, but we grew to love and understand each other. Amanda is one of my very trusted people in my life, somebody that I talk to on a regular basis about life and ministry. I'm so thankful for Amanda. I'm so thankful for Ruth and her husband Jim. And Ruth made this stole for me. So this is a stole that Ruth had made. She made the exact same one for Amanda, the exact same one. And then she brought me a new one today. So I'm going to put the new one on and take the old one off. But I'll wear it again. Don't worry. So stoles are expensive to buy, and they're so meaningful when people make them. And so I love them. We were talking about the length of them because this one's shorter than my other one. I was like, I got the small, we got the large. Now you can make me a medium one. So yeah, but I really appreciate it. I have like one purple one, but this one I like this one. So it means a lot to me. So really appreciate you being here today and having this gift from you. So Laura read about salt and light today, part of the Sermon on the Mount. Now, I want you to know that you are the salt of the earth. We're going to talk about this. You are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world. And if somebody told you that would be a good thing, right? That would be a compliment. Would you take that as a compliment? Somebody said, man, you're the light of the world. Debbie, you are the light of the world. That makes you feel pretty good, right? Nancy, you're like salt. Like, yeah, we like that, right? We like that feeling. So what does it mean if someone is a real salt of the earth kind of person? If somebody would call you that, what does that mean? You're a real salt of the earth kind of person. Go ahead and shout what you think that means. Righteous. Yeah. Dennis may be farther along on my slide, so you can back it up a notch. No. Yeah. No, that's actually not going to be one of the answers from this question. So you can try to cheat. You would have lost. So what does it mean? What does it mean to be salt of the earth? Down to earth. Dependable. Ooh, I like that. Humble. I like that, Rob. Real salt of the earth. What about you, Nyhart? You're real salt of the earth. Putting you on the spot. You're a master's in literature. You and Ruth would get along well.
People already said what came to my mind.
Yeah. People already said what came to mind. That's a good answer. That's usually what I would do in school too. Like, oh yeah, what they said. I like that. No, I'm with you. Yep, I go with that one.
Salt is very enhancing to different things.
Very enhancing.
It can enhance flavors. It can encourage flavors.
Yeah.
You might not get.
Yeah.
Not necessarily salty.
You're not salty, but it can help to enhance flavors. Now, what if somebody says that you're a light to the world, like you're a light to others? What would that mean to you? Positive? Encouraging? Nice? What is it? Shine? Anything else? We get nice sounds in an old church building. Yeah, it's a positive thing, right? Salt and light. When somebody would say that about us, it would invoke some kind of positive statement about us, some emotion, some kind of way to describe us. And so here's Jesus telling a group of people that you are salt and that you are light. But one of the things that we don't really look at that I think is actually kind of important is who is Jesus actually talking to in this? Because we think that Jesus is talking to the big group that has gathered around to hear him, but that's actually not who Jesus is talking to. If we back up to Matthew 5:1, right at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, it says, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to speak and taught them. He was teaching the disciples. Now, people were around and listening and hearing, maybe. Anybody here ever seen the movie Life of Brian? Nobody has seen the movie. Oh my gosh. Do you know what scene I'm talking about? There's a scene where they're doing the Sermon on the Mount, and people are in the back, and they can't hear Jesus. And blessed are the peacemakers. They go, blessed are the cheesemakers? I guess they could be, so there's probably people around hearing, but probably can't hear. But Jesus is talking to the disciples, and that's important for us, right? This is important to know. If Jesus was talking to the whole crowd, and this was an instruction for all of them, it could definitely be interpreted differently on what he is saying when he talks about salt and light, right? Because you got to imagine there's people there who are very curious about who Jesus is. There are people there who probably adamantly disagree, but just want to see what's going on. There are people there who want to follow Jesus. Heck, there may be people who are just like, there's a crowd, what's happening? And so if Jesus is just talking to everybody in the crowd, what we think about salt and light in that statement, the context of that could be something different, right? If you're a non-believer, so let's fast forward today. To be salt and light as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, means one thing in comparison if you're a non-believer or if you are part of another religion. So I think it's an important instruction for us as believers. And the way I look at it, I look at it like this. A lot of, I have friends who don't believe or struggle with it immensely. I have one friend, she says, I just don't see why you need religion to be a good person. It's a fair question. I get that a lot. I don't need religion to be a good person. Nobody needs religion to be a good person. You can choose to just be a good person. We all can have a moral and ethical code to abide by. But I will tell you, at least from my experience, before I really got strong in my faith, my ethical code only went so far. If I started to get uncomfortable or it started to become a threat to me, probably didn't really worry about it too much. I probably backed off. I was probably a little self-serving in some ways. I probably also didn't show as much love or patience or grace, because what does Jesus tell us to do? Pushes us farther in that, beyond our comfort zones, beyond what is normal in the world, beyond at times what we would even view as acceptable. I would think sometimes, especially when Jesus talks about like turning the other cheek and this, we would consider that person weak to do that. Why wouldn't you stand up and adamantly defend yourself? There are times for that, but Jesus always wants us to move with grace and love and mercy and justice. And that's a little different, the degree he wants to push us and what the world will ask of us. So for the disciples to receive this instruction, this is important, because Jesus is giving them a challenge in what they need to do as his disciples. So I would say this is also an instruction for what we need to do if we are going to claim we are disciples. We're going to claim we are Christians and we are following Jesus. So if we want to follow in these footsteps, then we really need to understand what Jesus is asking of his disciples. And so we got some uses of salt. Jesus starts with uses of salt. Salt was very important in that time. Obviously, it was very important for preserving of food. I mean, there wasn't refrigerators as far as I know. I don't think they had them in that day and age. But it was used for that. What are other things that we use salt for? Cooking, obviously, it enhances. Not all of us use it for cooking. I won't call out anybody in this room today who doesn't like to use salt. But what else do we use salt for? What else can salt be used for? Breathing it in? Yeah, those salt rooms. Hey, those are kind of popular, yeah. The Himalayan salt, right? Those pink, yeah. There's some medicinal purposes possibly around that, yeah. What else do we use salt for? Cure meat, yep. Some salty bacon, like that, don't we? Preserve? Mm-hmm. I read an article by a medical journal that said there are some 14,000 uses for salt. 14,000 uses. I always kind of crack up at the pink Himalayan salt. That's what I use. There's usually an expiration date on the bottle. How is that possible? That stuff has been in the earth for millions of years. Like, it doesn't expire. Now, it does if you add something to it, but salt in its pure form, it doesn't expire. fire. It's good. That's why it's a preservative. Salt cannot lose its saltiness. But Jesus says, if salt loses its taste. So what's he getting to? What's he talking about? Salt may not be able to lose its saltiness, but we can dilute it down, can't we? You can put salt and just add water or liquid or whatever you need to do. Like, you can dilute salt down to where you can't even taste it if you add enough to dilute it. So when we think about people in Jesus' day being salt of the earth, the word that comes up is righteous. That's what comes up. People who are salt of the earth, the people who can call themselves disciples, will be like salt. They will be righteous. They will be pure of heart. And they will be especially good. Not just good, but as this one commentator said, especially good. They're going to stick out. They're going to stand out. They're going to be unique. You're going to know they're Jesus' followers. You're going to know we are Christians by our love, as the song goes. This is the charge for the disciples, and this is the charge now for the church. And one commentary I was reading as I was preparing my sermon said that any church that adapts itself to the secular world, that the church's distinctive calling is forgotten, has rendered itself useless. Right? When we side so much with the secular world that we forgot what our mission is, we are no longer church. It's a statement I made months ago when I was talking about certain churches and preachers nowadays don't want to preach Jesus because they view Jesus as being too woke. If you don't want to preach Jesus and you don't want to follow Jesus, can you call yourself a Christian or a Christian church? I mean, to be Christian, you have to follow the words and actions of Jesus. So when we don't, when we ignore it, well, we have diluted down the word of Christ. So how do we keep our saltiness and know what we are supposed to do? Well, first I would say read and study the Gospels. Hey, if you read the Bible, do not start in Genesis, please. Do not ever start in Genesis. I'm going to then place a wager to see at what point you quit. Usually it's about chapter 13 or 14. I mean, don't. Start with the Gospels. The story in the Gospels is amazing, powerful. Start with Jesus. Study those. What's Jesus asking of us? What does he want? What do we see Jesus is doing, and how do we try to emulate the best that we can in the world, not just individually, but as a church? And what we have to know is that as we do that, it's going to put us in some harm's way. But it's important to understand not just Jesus' words, but his actions, and you can do this with Paul as well. Paul is very influential in the church. Paul says a lot of things, and one of the things that we talked about with Paul when I did that series on Paul is not every letter was actually written by Paul. So it's important to understand what Paul does over what some of Paul's words are, because they aren't always his words. So what does Paul do? What does Jesus do? Because actions matter more than words, yes? Not that words aren't important, but actions need to back it up. And so when we put ourselves into action, when we try to follow Christ closely, yeah, it's going to put us in harm's way at times. And at times, we're going to fall short. At times, we're going to fail to live up to that standard. Thank God that we are given grace and mercy and forgiveness. And sometimes we take that as an excuse. Well, we're going to fall short. I'm not perfect. Oh well. No. Like, this is a chance for us to acknowledge that, but then also work to improve, to become closer to Jesus in these moments, to try and try and try again. And when we are faced with decisions in our life, what to do and how to be, I think you can answer this with one really simple question. What is the next right thing to do? I know when Amanda and I went through some really horrible things in ministry together, and we didn't have a clue what to do, have a clue how to get through it. They don't write manuals on it. They don't give you books on it. You don't study this stuff in seminary. None of your friends in ministry have any clue. They've never been through it. We are unique in our position. What do? Well, you just try to do the next right thing. But I'm going to add a little something to that today. What is the next right thing to do that reflects the nature of Jesus? What is the next right thing for us individually and as a church to do that reflects the nature of Jesus? See, this is where study comes in discussion, and to sit across from tables and to talk about Scripture and talk about what how we see Jesus in ministry, in church, in life, all this. Because through that we get a better understanding when we hear different people's stories and how Jesus has been a part of their life or how their faith moves. Right? It expands how we see God and Jesus acting in the world and may give us a better reflection of who we need to be. Because if we can answer that question well, you can at least lay your head down at night and know you did the right thing. It may not ease the pain. It may not make things better. The problem may still be there in the morning, but you sleep knowing you did the right thing by your faith and by being a follower of Jesus. It doesn't mean that we're going to be successful, especially in ways in which the world terms that. But we can store up our treasures in heaven, as Jesus tells us. So that's the challenge in continuing to be salt, to not allow ourselves to be diluted down by the world. And through our example of righteousness, people can feel the love of Jesus through us. And what I want to say about righteousness is different than self-righteousness. We don't want to be self-righteous. Self-righteous is the idea or belief that we are morally superior or correct. I got a message this week. I'm used to online hate. I get online hate all the time through my social media, so I'm used to it. I was taken back a little bit this past week that I got a message from somebody, and they had said that if I don't believe everything my church does, I shouldn't be a pastor. Okay. And unfortunately, it was somebody who knows people in this church. Kind of hurt a little bit. Those messages sting. But I would never expect you all to believe everything that I believe. I would never expect that. I wouldn't want to push that on you. I wouldn't want you all to see that we have different contexts of our lives, different backgrounds of where we grew up and where we come from and how we've experienced God in faith. And you know what? We're all valid and right in how we move in our faith. It would be pretty self-righteous of me, wouldn't it? To say, I am the lone authority with all the answers. And if you don't do it exactly how I do it, well, you're wrong. That's self-righteous. That isn't right. That is not correct. We're called to be good and follow Jesus. So there is a difference. Living to do right in the eyes of God, to do right in our faith, to do right by the teachings of Jesus, can make us the light of the world. Lights are not made to be hidden, as Scripture tells us, right? They're not made to be put away. What's the point of the light if we put it in a box and you can't see it? What's the point of light if we're not there to shine? Yes, you are to shine. Yes, you are to be an example to people. Now, there's a difference between us bragging about the things that we are doing and trying to inspire people by trying to show people love. We want to talk about the things that we are doing, but Scripture warns us about praying in public and doing it using big words and trying to be fancy. I will tell you, there is no group in this world worse at this than ministers. You put us in a room, and it's like everybody wants to try to outshine the next person. Just pray. Like we're all trying to show up one another. And that's wrong. That's not what we're supposed to do. So I'll say, even in my ministers group, we have to fight this temptation to try to show out and try to be better than the next person and put the better prayer together. No, you just pray. We aren't to brag about what we give, to make other people feel bad about what they have. Think of the woman with the 2 coins. The men are standing around bragging about all the stuff that they've given, all the money they've given, everything they've done, and the woman comes up and gives her only 2 coins that she has left. She makes a full commitment to Jesus in that moment. Jesus lifts her up because of her commitment to him, not because of the amount that she gave. That's the difference in Jesus in the world. She is a light. She is an example to others about sacrifice. She is righteous in that moment. And we need to do the same. We want to inspire people through our ministry and examples of faith and action. I am blown away by the generosity of people in this room, because I know in ways in which you give. I don't know your dollar by any means, but I know that many of you are very generous, not just with your money, but with your time and with your energy. And I always say, Lord, if I ever become, hey, if you ever want to bless me with that, lotto win, I promise I'll give a lot away. But I will tell you, in reality, I have seen generosity in action that I do tell myself, if I ever am put in that situation, I want to do what they do. I want to be able to give away what they can give away. Because what a blessing that is, to be able to help people, to be able to have that kind of ability. Man, how great does that make us feel, and what a difference that can make to people. So seeing that in action makes a difference. It inspires us when we do it with humility. And too many times churches become self-serving and work to protect the building. Me and Ruth were just talking about the expense of church properties. It is probably one of the major issues in churches today, especially with the decline of churches. They can't keep up with these massive properties. But we become so self-serving that that's all we care about, is to protect the building or the institution. And we do that more than actually caring for the people and spreading good news. I heard a story about a church. I can't remember exactly where the church is located, but they're getting ready to close. I actually was on my Facebook this morning. One of my friends is preaching at a church. Today's their last worship service. And that's sad. I know, Ruth, you guys went through that at Edenside. It's a tough thing when your church closes, something you've invested so much into, and you got to find a new community. This one church, they were going to close. They knew, hey, we're decline we have nobody coming to church. We're down less than 10 people. We have some money in the bank, but we have nothing to put the money into. So you know what we're going to do? Screw it. We're just gonna throw money at the ministries in the community and going to do all the work and all the things that we should be doing. We're just gonna go for it. We're just going to do it. Who cares what we have left? We want to do good work for this next year. We'll celebrate it, close the church, and be good. Well, the opposite happened. They did the thing, and the church grew and survived and is thriving. Why? Because they did what they were supposed to do. They didn't hoard it for themselves. They didn't hoard it to enrich their own place. They said, you know what? We're in the corner. Let's do ministry. Hey, let's do ministry. That's being the light in this world. Doing ministry for other people. That's what Jesus tells us to do. And I think when churches do this, when we do this as individuals, I believe Jesus multiplies that. We see it in action in our food pantry each and every week. And I know we talk about a lot, but it is there. We see it all the time, don't we, Esther? Boy, we're in a pickle. We need this thing to happen. Boy, what happens? It walks through the door the next day. Unbelievable. All the time it happens. It's a God thing. Because the pantry and you all that are involved with that, this church that supports that, you are light to this community, feeding 400 plus people every week. That's amazing. People know Jesus through us. What version of Jesus do we want to put out in this world? We have to be aware of the Jesus that we share through our words and our actions, and to make sure we are portraying Jesus well in this world. You, as followers, are to be the light of the world. We, as a church, are to be the light of the world, the light of this community at the very least. So may our example shine bright, one that brings repair, one that brings justice, one that brings love, that brings empathy, one that brings understanding to this world, to our community. And not just here, but beyond these walls, and wherever we go. So, Laura, you'll enjoy this. Go and be salty, Laura. Go and be salty. You all go and be salty. And go and have your light shine before others. Amen.